and welcome to the Your Good News podcast with me, Katherine Getty. It's easy to believe the news around us that the world is dark and the future is the same. But what if we chose something different? What if we chose to find the good news in each day? This podcast is a collection of interviews with friends, mentors, colleagues on their good news. From business to health to politics and everything in between, it's my hope that you leave with a boost and find your good news. You are in for a real treat today as I am joined by a new friend. I'm going to call her a new friend, Jami Crist. We were connected by a previous guest and dear friend, Lindsay Thomas. In learning more about Jami's story, I knew she'd be a perfect guest. She's someone who seeks to break down barriers for herself and for others. In this episode, we discuss how sports played an instrumental role in her life and how listening to her gut led her along the way. We also discuss how sharing your story can be a powerful way to let others and yourself know you're not alone. I could keep raving about this episode, but I think I better just let the interview speak for itself. Now, my episode with the incomparable Jami Crist. You know, Jami, I am so excited for this episode. You know, we were connected through our mutual friend, Lindsay Thomas, and she raved just about the light that you have. And I've been checking on your Instagram, getting to know you more through that. I said this before we started recording, you're so open, brave, you're honest. And I am so looking forward to this conversation and hearing your good news. So I begin every episode the same way. I like to ask my guests, what's your good news? Welcome, Jami.
Thanks. It's so good to be here with you, Katherine. And I appreciate it. What you're trying to do is just spread positivity. And I think the world needs it more than ever. We're about to be in another mask mandate. And it's just you could just tell people's faces. So thank you for having me. Thank you for your mission and what you're doing. My good news, just to kick it off here, I just found out I got Best of Baltimore Wellness Influencer. I had no idea it was happening, and it was a really cool moment. June was very physically and mentally a very hard month for me. We went through a fourth loss, of a pregnancy, and I literally came back from the beach for the day, came home from the hospital, and then got this kind of cryptic email. It was hi, we would like to send you the Best of Baltimore magazine. You won in the category of Futures Female Best Wellness Influencer. And I'm like, wait, what? Was I nominated? What?
When did this happen?
Yeah, I had no idea. I was I know I've been gone from Baltimore for hot 4 weeks, but what do you mean? So basically they wrote a really, I had no idea. At that point, I didn't even know what they wrote. I'm I don't even know what this means. So then I got the magazine and they wrote in there about, I was a, Rev instructor, how I really embrace, just truth and real and rawness, and talking through our fertility journey and, how it's empowered others to still have sharing is best and to really help, sharing our story to help others. And so when I read that, I was wow, and coming off our fourth loss, like I said, it was a really tough month and transition coming back home. And I just, and seeing those heartfelt words and just how honest they were, it was awesome. And it just made me feel good that yes, what I'm going through right now is very hard, but at the same time, I share because I don't want people to feel alone. I share because it is important as women, I joke around about this all the time. Remember as high school, they're even if you look at a penis, you'll get pregnant.
I believe that all the time.
Yeah. So it's you got to know what's going on.
Well, and I think that talked in a couple other episodes, feeling not alone, we came up in this world and it was kind of I don't know if you felt this way, but I was understanding my body or understanding anything about how anything worked was off limits, which sounds the antithesis of what it should be. So to be in a place where you feel so comfortable to be honest, it's oh, I have felt that way. And I'm not different for feeling that way, or I'm in this spot and I can empathize with you.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. And I'll include, is there a link to the Best in Baltimore?
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it'll be in the show notes that you can get to read a little bit more about Jami, but we're going to dive in. So thank you for sharing your good news. I'm so excited. I got to see, I'm pretty sure now my cat is joining the podcast. Nancy is back, guys. She's back. She hasn't been here since episode 1. Okay, it's fine.
Oh my God. It's like,
this is real. We are real. So just to kind of level set, fitness is weaved throughout your story, and you started as an athlete at a very young age. Can you share more on how you got started, how you realized that this was a passion for you?
wow. Yeah. So when I was, oh my God, like 5 years old at the time, my dad just passed away. I mean, I was so young. I didn't really fully understand what was going on. My mom at the time, she was an alcoholic, couldn't take care of herself, let alone me. We were living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so my aunt, who lived in Delaware, who is now my legal guardian, and she's been, I've been fortunate enough to have two moms. My aunt brought me into Delaware to live with her and her son. She just had her newborn son. And I don't know how I got into sports, but magically I got into t-ball, and then grew up in softball. And softball, I was always a hyperactive child. I still am, but I'm an adult now. I just always had so much energy. And I think when I look back as a kid then, luckily I had sport, because I think if I would have recognized what's happening personally in my family, like that energy could have gone somewhere worse, and just not in a good way, where sport allowed me to have another, like, I felt like I had another family. I had a community, and it was a distraction of like what serious things were happening at home. And so, I mean, I was always active outside. I was playing, like I said, softball. And then I got into field hockey. We had travel softball. I did cheerleading, indoor track. Like I said, I just always had so much energy that I had to like burn it off, and just never sat still. So it just, I loved about the concept of a team. I grew up in a very small town in Smyrna, Delaware, and it just the community there within sport was just so a big part of my life. The people I grew up with, like we had a very tight knit group, and they like people were family to me there. I had a very small family in Smyrna, so like just to think like the extension of the network and the people that I had, like that always was like dear to my heart, and it always allowed me to be an outlet. Like it just always made me feel good in my body, mentally and physically.
And it sounds like you're referencing the team and the community, and how that team really provided another way for you to kind of be yourself, and like you kind of got to explore yourself as a child, like being with that community and realizing that community was really important to you. And I know that continues to be really important to you. You played college athletics. So can you tell me more about kind of how that you transitioned from a high schooler to college? What that transition like, playing college sports?
Well, of course, like my story is always like it's never like a formal like, oh, I moved here and then this happened. I went to Lebanon Valley, which is like a small private liberal arts school by Hershey, Pennsylvania. I'm going to say Annville, and people are going to be like, where is that? Everybody knows where. I think most people know where Hershey, Pennsylvania is if you live on the East Coast. But, it was a small school. I met some amazing people there. It's still like people who I'm like my best friend to this day is, from meeting her there. I played field hockey there, and I realized that I didn't want to be at a small school. It was just too tiny for me in my hometown. And I was like, I can't deal with this. So I was like, I need to get out a little bit more. So I actually originally wanted to play at Salisbury University. They were 3-time national champions. The program was really good. I actually almost went to school. I was focusing on physical therapy, and Lebanon Valley at the time had a program that was like 30 people max. It was a doctorate program for 6 years. Typically doctorate programs for PTs are 7 years. So I was like, I'll just go there for 6 years. I'll be in PT school. I got on the waiting list. I was like number 31. They called me the day before school started, and they're like, hey, do you want to join the PT program? And at this point I was like, I'll just do business. Like I'll figure it out. I don't really know where I want to go. And so, starting field hockey camp was awful. Like we did this thing called the gauntlet, which was like you run
a mile.
You run a time mile. Just a timed time mile. So, and you had to like hit a certain time. And so then you turn right back around, you had to run a half a mile, a quarter mile. And then it was like 10:40s. Like, I just remember like, I felt like death afterward. And this was like your opening session to like college field hockey. So I was D3, like, so I can't even imagine what D1 was like. And then you had 2 or 3 days of practices for 3-4 days. And then actually I was fortunate enough. We went to London to compete right before school started. So let alone like packing up and moving. I was living in Dewey Beach, then like, which was a disaster. Like I was like, why would I go live at the beach before doing this? And then training for field hockey. We went to the UK, came back, and then started classes. And so like, it was just, I remember just like.
That's a transition.
Yeah. Oh my God. And it was like, I was never like a homesick child, but I remember it was like, what is happening right now? And like, this is a lot. So anyway, so transferred a year later, went down to Salisbury. I actually got in a car accident that summer, so I couldn't play that fall season. So then I trained with the team that winter, walked on that season of my junior year. So I didn't get to play my sophomore year. Yeah. And that was really the first time I didn't have athletics in my life. And that was just like, it was not good. Like I
was going to ask you. Yeah.
Drinking was like, I was partying all the time. And like I said, I have a lot of energy. So now I see why like I needed to be like active. And then, I ended up staying at Salisbury until I graduated. I continued within marketing. I stuck with marketing and business. And then I interned with the Baltimore Ravens. So that really kickstarted like into my career randomly. I just wanted to be in sport and continue with it.
It sounds like, and for me, workout has always been a therapy. So I was wondering, like in that sophomore year, how that felt. And it's nice that you had that chance to come back, play again, pursue kind of having athletics, but also pursue something else like marketing. You seem like you got so many great ideas. Did you find like marketing was a really good fit for you during that time? And even continuing now, I mean, not to give away the rest of the podcast.
Yeah, it's funny, when I look back, because I was so heart set on being a PT, like I wanted to own my own PT business, the whole bit. And now where I am today, and I'm like, oh yeah, like my journey is that's supposed to happen. And with marketing, I just my passion was more on the event side, like being out and about with people and like creating experiences. I was always loved, my aunt would kill me, but like, I always loved having parties at her house. Even in high school, I loved like entertaining people. I've always loved having people over. So like now I think when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, like that's why I love doing events, and marketing events was like a big thing. So when I got an internship with the Ravens at that time, I got to experience their training camp, which is a big event experience, game days. And like, I knew that I was like, I need to figure out how to stay in this industry because like, this is my call. Like, this is it. Like, so that's kind of how it came about within marketing.
Yeah. And from that Ravens experience, is that when you transitioned into an Under Armour role at that point?
So Under Armour wasn't really big then. So this was in 2007. So Under Armour was just like, they started in 1996. They went public in 2006. So just a year later, this is 2007. So I'm really like, I feel like I'm aging myself right now. So when I started interning for the Ravens were literally right down the street from Under Armour's campus. And so I would see more of the brand in Baltimore. We wore the Cold Gear mocks for field hockey a lot or softball. And I'm sure everybody remember it was like their Under Armour. That's what they're like, oh yeah, my Under Armour. And it was like literally their turtleneck that kept them warm, throughout games. And so we were kind of familiar with the product. But then when I would come to Baltimore, like I would just see these big billboards about Under Armour when you come on 95 and then you saw the campus and you're like, this is cool. And when I started reading more about the company, I was like, oh my God, this is where I need to apply here. I need to be part of this company.
What was really drawing you? Was it like the mission, or was it the fact that it was like really, really in Baltimore? What was it that drew you to the company?
So it was when you got on the website, you got to know more about the brand. It was like team sports. The culture we talked about being part of a team. It was like, people are like, you need a quarterback, it was just like my type of terms that I could relate to, and just seeing what they were doing in the market of just growing this brand. Like, I mean, when we grew up, Nike was like the only brand. I know. A little bit. So like to think like, oh my God, I could actually work for a sports brand that's on the East Coast and I don't have to move to Oregon to work for Nike. Like, and let alone like growing up, I had zero connections. My family didn't know a single person. So I was like, there's no way that I'm going to get to the West Coast and work for this big brand. So Under Armour was like the East Coast kids, to have a chance to work for a brand like this, which was cool.
It's such a cool experience. And you were there for, remind me, how many years were you at Under Armour?
almost 13 years. It was like 12 to 13 years, pretty much.
What was one of your favorite memories?
I mean, honestly, like the early days were the best.
Yeah.
It was the people. Honestly, it's the people. Like if I had to like memory wise, like it's just people. The people that I got to work with are now my family, and I've met some of my best friends there, and we would just have the best time. But honestly, I think a moment for me was that I got invited to I think it was 2010 Miami Super Bowl. And I was like just coming out of customer service. They needed help from an events perspective. I was just transitioning to this team. And they're like, hey, we need your help. Can you fly down to Miami like tomorrow? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to the Super Bowl. I'm like, holy shit. Like having this moment, calling my family, like, oh, like I'm going to go work. And it just flying into Miami and staying at the Eden Rock, if you've ever been, like, it was just like a surreal moment of just like, oh my God, how is this happening right now? Because this was just like a dream, And I would say like that was my first moment.
That was like pinch me moment. You said 2010, right?
Yeah.
I believe that was the New Orleans Saints year. I'm a Saints fan. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. I don't know if you're a Ravens fan, but I'm pretty sure that was the year the Saints won.
Was that in Miami?
Yeah.
Yeah. I forget who, I don't even remember who played. I just remember I was there.
You're like, this is
Super Bowl.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So as you were there for 13 years, you kind of started were you looking for another opportunity? Did you feel like you were growing, or what called you Super Coffee?
Oh yeah. I mean, I actually tried to quit before. I did quit. I don't sit still. And so like, I would have these moments where like, am I moving up fast enough? Am I getting, the max of what I can bring to the table? And so really horrible boss. So I had 9 different lives there. So I was in customer service, and then I went to event management 3-4 years. Yeah. And then I switched to social media marketing, did that for a year, realized that I missed human interaction, and then switched to sports marketing for my last 6 years there. So the year I was doing social media marketing, I was just not in a great place with my boss at the time. It was just weird. So I actually quit and tried to join Vega Protein for regional sales rep. And the VP of marketing at times, like, you're not leaving. Like, we know what the problem is. You're not going. And I'm like, well, okay, well, would you like me to go then? Because I cannot do this anymore. Like, it was just not a good place. So they were like, well, we actually want to bring you on sports marketing. And which was funny because a year before then, I actually applied for a sports marketing role and I didn't get it. And and same thing, like when I look back to my journey, I was like, okay, something not right now. And if I would have gotten that job then for sports marketing, like the boss I would have had, the setup would have been great. I probably would have left anyway. Where I actually, when I came to the sports marketing team, what I did and joined, like I entered into the run category, which is the first time ever that happened for the brand. I took the lead on it. I built the category for the brand for sports marketing. It opened so many doors for me and like expanded my career at Under Armour for another 6 years. Like it's just funny how it all worked out, and the people I met along the way too. Same thing. Like I never imagined that without them in my life now. And so, so getting towards the end of leaving Under Armour, I think in the last 2 years, I was looking elsewhere, just knowing like, I felt like I was hitting my max at Under Armour. The company is completely different now. And I still love the brand and I hope the best for them. But I just knew like I would be part of a smaller brand again. I love the building phase of it and just growing with them and building culture. And so actually my former boss who was at Under Armour is now the CMO at Super Coffee. And I actually did some work with Super Coffee, but like when the brothers first started the company, it was, they were right down the street. This was 2015. And they were like, hey, can we bring Super Coffee to your running events for Under Armour? I'm like, yeah, sure. Whatever. Like, come on and set up a table. Like, sure.
Yeah.
And then here we are 6 years later, I'm working for them and, they're a massive growing beverage brand now that is just totally disrupting the market. And I just feel really fortunate where I landed because it's just like the people are everything. And now I'm helping them with their partnership marketing for the brand.
There's like so many nuggets that you just like drop that I'm like, I mean, you continue just to be so open in your career. And it's like, you're listening to your gut along the way and you're like, this isn't the right fit, but you're also open to the opportunities, I feel like, that come along and make sure they align kind of with your personal goals. Like, I hope that people appreciate that and like hear it in their own lives of like, there's some times where it's like, maybe it's not the right time, but it's not the right time. It could be right time in a year or 2 years or 3 years. I think it's so easy to be like, oh, I'm writing this off completely. So that's an amazing nugget you just shared. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
So, what has been the biggest lesson that you've taken away as you've moved in the super coffee role? You started talking about building culture and kind of disrupting the market. What are the other things that you kind of take along the way that you're like, oh, this has been a really interesting thing that I've figured out?
That's a great question. I would say just knowing that not everything's going to be perfect and to be patient. And I think, especially our generation, everything has to be perfect. Yeah. And it's like,
it's not curated.
Right. And you just have to be patient. And I mean, listen, I've gone through a lot of healing. I've done a lot of work on myself where I was definitely that perfectionist where like, if it wasn't ready at the right time or it wasn't perfect of what it should have been or overthinking it, overworking it, it's just like, sometimes you just need to give room to breathe and room where you don't have to speak or you don't have to jump on it and you don't have to be the first. And I think that's something I learned very much so throughout Under Armour is, some serious burnout of overworking and this perfectionist work to prove yourself. And I think just trusting, like, I have proven myself and that's why they brought me here. And I have to trust in that I don't feel like I constantly have to prove myself anymore. Like if a company's bring you in and they interviewed you and they hired you, like they trust in you for some reason of doing that. Yeah. So just trust in that, and I think that's something, it's hard because it's
really hard.
You want to prove yourself to the team. You're new and you just want to show everything that you can do. And I think just being gentle to that journey in a sense of like, just the right moments will come and your expertise will shine through when it's those moments.
I wish everyone could see my head. I was nodding furiously through that because that was a lesson that, I think it is like so often it's easy to get in that rat race of thinking that you have to constantly prove yourself versus just being in your own like space. And from that space, you can create a lot better. Like when you're like forced, I feel like sometimes I'm like, if I feel forced, it's not going to be my best work product. So that's just dropping knowledge, Shane. We're just dropping knowledge.
Good. I hope it helps. It's helped me along the way.
Yeah.
Lots of therapy.
Same. My therapist is my best friend. In your bio, you shared that knocking down barriers for other females was a passion, both personally and professionally. How has that shown up? I think, so often we talk about that, but how does it actualize for you? I think can be really some good lessons for people to hear.
Yeah. So I would say professionally, I think as women, kind of going to the point of like, we have to constantly prove ourselves and, not putting us first, our health and our wellness. And so like, I had major adrenal fatigue and burnout that my body, like I was having horrible night sweats in my mid-20s, late 20s. And I thought I was going through menopause, like, because I was sweating that bad at night and it was due to stress. And so, I just felt like I constantly had to prove myself within the industry, especially of all men. Once again, when I got into the run industry, I would show up, I would be the youngest and I was the only female sometimes from a brand perspective and meeting with these agents who are all older men, and just proving to say like, I do belong at the table and I know what I'm talking about and showing that I may know how to talk to a female athlete very differently than you. And this is why, so that's one aspect of it. As a culture standpoint of, representation of women's resources in a company and like young females, like my friends and I, there's like a group of 6 of us who grew up at Under Armour together. And we started there in our young 20s. Like, there's definitely some things that we didn't know was right or wrong because like, this is the way we were raised. So when you go Under Armour, it was like, these older men who would make comments to us or I don't know, like some certain work trips, like ended up at some clubs that were not appropriate. And we just didn't know. And we were just like, okay, this is what's normal. Like we didn't know. And so I think us help. And it was like another thing, last thing was like competition. So sometimes you would see a lot of like female leaders compete against each other in the boardroom where it's like, guys, like we're on the same team. Like, let's help each other. And I feel like my group of women at Under Armour, like we locked arms and would help each other internally, which felt really good. So I think that from a professional standpoint. And then from a personal standpoint, I think really losing my mom a couple of years ago and being honest about our relationship, it wasn't perfect. By any means. She was an alcoholic. She had a lot of struggles, but still, like, she was my mom at the end of the day. And we definitely had our highs and lows and how hard that was. And when you look around, like, everybody's posting these perfect pictures of, their family, their moms, they're with their moms are their best friends. My family was very different, but then getting into this pregnancy thing was like, we weren't really quote unquote trying, but I got pregnant in 2019 and at the 4-month mark, we found out we had to terminate the pregnancy because the baby was not going to make it due to a chromosome issue and also neurologically. So, I was kind of the first one in our group to start having kids. And then next thing I know, it's like, we didn't get a baby, but everybody else is now having babies. And, I'm now at almost 2 years later and 4 losses later. And it's like, why has this never been talked about before? Like we were talking in the beginning, it's just like, nobody talks about like what things could affect your health and how it may not be the easy journey and what that means for you and what resources. And so when I'm going through this process, it's like, what I'm finding out is like, I have to advocate. And in the traditional medicine too, it's like, I have found acupuncture that's helped me tremendously. Therapy has helped me tremendously. Like finding the resources that have helped me physically and mentally because it is so draining. And, I've had people along the way that have reached out to me to say, hey, this worked for me or this. So I've just taken all those tips and tools from friends and strangers, honestly, and have shared publicly so I can help others along their journey because it is so hard. And I never realized, you don't realize it until you go through it. And now I see, I'm like, oh my God, like I had no idea.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing it because I know like there are these things that we kind of talked about it earlier. We don't talk about as women it's like as if having children, it's all going to be so easy and boom, it's going to happen. And, you wrote before the podcast, you kind of put in your notes that you're trying to keep it positive, but I can only imagine like that's not always easy. And so you've said therapy and acupuncture and talking about it. Are there other ways that you have seen my voice is cracking, because I think that finding the good in this of like growth or what has been something for you that's kind of shined through?
Yeah, I would say the one thing I didn't realize, with my husband and I, we've always been close, but like going through something like this has totally strengthened our marriage and our relationship to a whole nother level that I just never knew that could exist. And I'm so grateful for it. I would say that that's probably one of the biggest things. The second thing is just, being able to help others along the way, even though like sometimes it is like that pit in the stomach where you're just like, when I turn on social media and I see another pregnancy post or announcement, and I'm just like, it does feel like a punch in the gut sometimes. But at the same time, it's like, if I can help others along the way that may be struggling, that gives me hope. And I look back in my journey, I'm like, I know we will have a baby. Like I have no doubt in my mind. I will have a child in my arms one of these days. And when I look back to the journey of all things, like when I've ever had a challenge or things have come in as a barrier, like things have always worked out on the other side. And I truly believe that, even though how hard it can be, it's not fair by any means, but it's just like, this is part of my path. And so if I could ever help others along the way and be a voice and advocate, that gives, doing that for others gives me strength and knowing that I can help.
Yeah. Cause I think I've had friends that have had similar and they suffer in silence and no one should suffer in silence. There always are people around you that can like listen and they may not know. I know I don't always have the right things to say, but I can listen and I can be there and I think sometimes I hope people realize that listening can be just as powerful as saying that one thing that they need to hear,
Yeah.
You seem like throughout your story, you continue to make the choice to find a community, to be a part of a team, to engage others, a part of your journey, to share your story. What would be one thing you'd love to tell your younger self? Maybe it was that last little nugget that you shared. What would you want to tell your younger self about who you are today, because you are a pretty amazing person. I am just grateful you've been able to be on the podcast today.
No, thank you. Yeah, I would just say, like I said, I think just knowing that you will make it on the other side and how hard it can be some days, you have to feel it. I think that was a big thing for me. In the longest time, I would resist, the feelings, because as a kid, like I was always, my aunt worked a lot. I was kind of by myself, and I just always had to like shove it down and keep moving forward. Where coming into this journey, like you can't do that at all, because you will explode. You will just lose it a little bit, and you have to feel it, to process it. And so like processing whatever you're going through and knowing that you have people around you is definitely going to help you get to that other side. I think it was Glennon Doyle in her book Untamed, where, she's like, when you hit the lowest, I'm totally chopping this up, it's just knowing like it can only get higher from here. Yeah. And like literally I go through that motion. I think about that quote from her. I'm like, well, we can only get higher from here. So that's where we're at. Like, and I just something that keeps in mind and to know that. So yeah.
Well, I have so appreciated just you sharing your light today. I am deeply touched. I'm trying not to cry. Everyone who knows me knows that I love crying because I think it's healthy. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up today?
No, I just, I think for your listeners, and especially your female listeners, just knowing that they're not alone, and whatever the process may be, to reach out. They don't have to sit in silence. I know it's not easy for everybody, and it's so hard right now with social media. Like take the breaks for you. Like there's moments where I've gone totally silent on social just because I am like, I just can't open the app. I just can't see it. And you just never know what others are going through because of social. And so just, find people that you can resonate with to talk to and just lean on that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I said at the outset of the podcast how inspiring and how honest Jami is. But what struck me the most is that in our short time together, I felt fully myself too. I hope you leave feeling fully yourself, feeling dedicated to listening to that voice in your head asking you to take the lead. Thank you again for joining another episode of the Your Good News podcast. Please subscribe, like, review, and join me again next week for another episode.